Alrighty. Alrighty. Wait for people to get in here so we can begin. Okay. Gonna start in like 5 minutes. Just as soon as some more people begin to pop in. All right. I think we can begin. Oh God, my phone is talking back in my voice. That's horrible. I have the Twitch chat up on my phone this time, so I'm not gonna be going like back and forth between Twitch and Worm, and I can just sort of stick on Worm, and I'll just be periodically glancing over at the chat. But other than that, I think that we can basically begin. So, a little recap. If those of you who are watching the VOD, I guess, forgot or just kind of zoned out during a 5-hour stream, which I get. The streams from here on out are probably going to be averaging around 3 hours, I'm going to say. And just because parts 1 and 2 are just so short compared to the rest of the series. But now, if we go to the table of contents, we're going to see that there are 12 parts instead of just 6 or 9, and they get longer. So, yeah. All right. So I guess we can start. Get yourselves nice and comfy. Get a snack, get a drink. Cover up with some blankets. Get yourself nice and warm because we're gonna read a story about bugs. Agitation 3.1. Tuesday morning found me running again. First thing, I woke up at my normal time, apologized to my dad for not having breakfast with him, and headed out the door. Hood on my sweatshirt up to hide the mess of my uncombed hair. There was something appealing about being out and about before the city had woken up. I didn't usually get out quite this early, so it was a refreshing change. As I headed east at a brisk jog, there were no cars or people on the street. It was 6:30 in the morning, and the sun had just finished rising, so the shadows were long. The air was cool enough for my breath to fog. It was like Brockton Bay was a ghost town in a good way. My training regimen had me running every morning and an afternoon between more running and doing more exercises in the afternoon, depending on which day of the week it was. The primary goal was to build my stamina. In February, Sophia had goaded some boys into trying to catch me. I think the goal had just been to duct tape me to a telephone pole. I had escaped, helped mostly by the fact that the boys hadn't really cared enough to run after me. But I found myself winded after just a block. It had been a wake-up call about just when I was starting to think about going out in costume. Not long after I started training. After a few starts and stops, I had settled into a routine. I was more fit now. While I could hardly say I was heavy before, I had the unfortunate combination of a slight bulge for a belly, small breasts, and boomstick-thin arms and legs. It added up to me looking like something a frog forced to stand on its hind legs. 3.5 months had burned away the body fat, leaving me very lean, and had given me the stamina to run a steady jog without leaving me panting for breath. I didn't aim to just jog though. I steadily increased my pace with every block that I ran, as I headed towards the water. By the 5th block, I was running. My general approach was not to get too worried about counting the miles or measuring the times. That just felt like it was distracting me from my own awareness of my body and its limits. If it felt too easy, I just pushed myself a step further than I had the previous day. The routes I took varied each day at my father's insistence, but it usually took me to the same place. In Brockton Bay, going east took you 1 or 2 places. You either ended up at the docks or you ended up at the boardwalk. Because most areas of the docks were not the sort of place you just breeze through, given the vagrants gang members in general crime, I stuck to the main roads leading past the docks, and to the boardwalk. It was usually close to 7 by the time I got to the bridge that went over Lord Street. From there, it was a block to the boardwalk. I slowed down as the sidewalk ended and the wooden platform began. Though my legs were still aching and I was out of breath, I forced myself to keep a low and steady pace rather than just stop. Along the boardwalk, people were starting their day. Most places were still closed with top-notch security systems, steel shutters, and iron grate protecting all of the expensive stores, but there were still cafes and restaurants opening up. Other stores had vans parked in front and were busy loading in their shipments. There were only a few people out and about, which made it easy to find Brian. Brian was leaning over on the wooden railing, looking over the beach. Balanced on the railing next to him was a paper bag and a cardboard tray with coffee in each of the 4 pockets. I stopped beside him, and he greeted me with a broad smile. "Hey, you're right on time," he said. Hey, look, I feel like I'm giving Brian a voice like Kronk. "Oh, nice cock. Taylor, nice cock." He looked different than he had when I saw him on Monday. He was wearing a sweater under a felt jacket. His jeans didn't have any rips or tears in them, and his boots were still shine. I thought his bobs were still shine. His bobs and vagine. His boots were shined. On Monday, he had given me the impression of a regular person who lived at the docks. The fashionable, well-fit clothes he wore today made it look like someone who belonged on the boardwalk alongside the customers who shopped at stores where nothing cost less than $100. The contrast and the ease with which he seemed to make the transitions were startling. My estimation of Brian rose a notch. "Hey," I said, feeling a touch embarrassed of having taken so long to respond and feeling painfully underdressed in his presence. I hadn't expected him to dress so well. I hoped by being out of breath enough was enough of an excuse for the delay in response. There was nothing I could do about feeling unfashionable. He gestured towards the paper bag. "I got donuts and croissants from the cafe over there, and a coffee if you want it." "I want," he said. Then I felt dumb for the awkward lapse into caveman speak. I blamed the early hour of the day. Yeah, I get that, Taylor. To try and save face, I added thanks. She just hopped on all fours and was like, Thank for coffee." I fished out a sugar-dusted donut and bit into it. I couldn't tell right away that it wasn't the kind of donut that was mass-produced at some central factory and delivered overnight to the shops for baking in the morning. It's freshly made, probably right at the store a block away, and sold right out of the oven. God, I wish that there was a fucking donut place like that by me. That sounds so good. All I have is, Dunkin', which isn't bad. It's just, it's not fresh. "So good," I said, sucking the sugar from my fingertips before reaching for one of the coffees. Seeing the logo, I looked over at the cafe and asked, Don't coffees there cost $15 a cup?" Brian chuckled. "We can afford it, Taylor. It's just Starbucks." Took me a second to process the idea, as I made the connection, I felt like an idiot. These guys were raking in thousands of dollars on a given job, and they had given me $2,000 up front. I wasn't willing to spend the money knowing where it came from, so just sitting in a cubbyhole I kept my costume in, nagging at me. I couldn't tell Brian that I was spending it either, without risking having to explain why. "Yeah, I guess," I said, eventually. I leaned my elbows on the wooden railing beside Brian and stared over at the water. There were a few die-hard windsurfers just ready to start the day. I guess it made some sense, since there would be the occasional boat going out in the water later. "How's your arm?" he asked. I extended my arm, clenched my fist, and relaxed it to demonstrate. Only hurts when I flex it. I didn't tell him that it had been hurting badly enough to cost me some sleep that night. "We'll leave the stitches in for about another week, I think, before we take him out," Brian said. "You can go to your doctor and have him do it, or drop by and I'll take care of it." I nodded. A turn of the salt water and seaweed-scented wind blew my hood back, and I took a second to push the hair out of my face and pull my hood up. "I'm sorry for Rachel and the whole incident last night," Brian said. "I wanted to apologize sooner, but I figured it would be a bad idea to bring it up while she was in earshot." "That's okay," I said. I wasn't sure what it was, but it wasn't really his fault. I tried to put my thoughts into words. I think, well, I expected to have people attack me from the moment I put on the costume, so I shouldn't be surprised, right? Brian nodded, but didn't say anything, so I added, it caught me a little off guard, but it came from someone that's supposedly on my team, but I'm dealing. Just so you know, Brian told me, just from what I saw after you left last night, as people were waking up that morning, Rach seemed to have stopped protesting quite as loudly or often as at the idea of someone else joining the team. She's still not happy about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a repeat performance. I laughed a little too abruptly and high-pitched than I would have liked. God, I hope not. She's kind of a special case, Brian said. I think that growing up the way she did kind of messed her up. No family, too old, and not really attractive enough to be a good candidate for adoption. I feel bad for saying that, but that's the way these things work, you know? He glanced over his shoulder at me. I nodded. I kind of forget how much characters nod in Worm. That's a big writing hurdle that I have had to knock myself out of. I wrote nod, he nodded, she nodded, everyone nodded way too much in my first drafts, and I really have been trying to keep the nodding to a minimum. But sometimes I just gotta be they nodded, whatever. It's sometimes you just can't be they shook their head at an angle. That just sound stupid. Writer's tip number 1 of 5,000 for you. So she spent a good decade in foster care, no fixed place to live, fighting both tooth and nail for the other foster kids to even the most basic luxuries and possessions. My guess, she was screwed up before she even got her powers, and with things happening the way it did, her powers pushed her into the deepest ends of the antisocial pool. Makes sense, I said. Then I added, I read her page on the wiki. So you've got the gist of it, Brian said. She's a handful to deal with, even for me, and I think she actually considers me a friend, or as much as a friend as someone like her can have anyway. But if you can at least tolerate her, you should see we got a pretty good thing going with the team. Sure, I said. We'll give it a shot anyways. He smiled at me and I dropped my gaze, embarrassed. I spied a crab. Oh, time for crab. I spotted a crab scuttling across the beach almost directly below us. I reached out with my power and stopped it in its tracks. I think someone in chat was asking last night whether she could control crabs and lobsters too. Well, here you go. She can, in fact, control crab. Though I didn't need to, I extended my finger and pointed it at it, then waved my finger lazily as I made the crab follow where my index finger was pointing. Since Brian and I were both leaning over the railing, there was practically nothing on the boardwalk that wasn't busy with work or getting their store open for the day. I was pretty certain nobody else would figure out what I was doing. Time for crab. Brian saw the crab dancing in circles and figure eights and smiled. Conspiratorially, he leaned in closer to me and whispered, "Control crabs too?" I nodded, feeling just a bit of a thrill about how we were huddled like this, sharing secrets while the other people around us were totally in the dark. I told him, I used to think I could control anything with an exoskeleton or shell, but I can control earthworms too. The name of the worm, among other things, and they don't have shells. I think all it takes is that they have to have very simple brains. The foreshadowing. I made it run in circles and figure eights for a short while longer, then released it to go about its business. I should bring the others their morning coffee. I should bring the others the morning coffee before they come looking for me. Want to come with? Brian asked. I shook my head. I gotta get home and get ready for school. Oh, right. Brian said. I forgot about stuff like that. You guys don't go? I take classes online. Brian said. My folks think it's so I can hold a job to pay for my apartment, which is kind of true. Alec dropped out, Rachel never went, and Lisa already applied for and tested for her GED. Cheated using her power, but she hasn't. Ah, I said. My focus was more or less dwelling on the idea that Brian had an apartment, not the fact that Gru, the successful supervillain, had an apartment. Lisa had mentioned that to me, but Brian, the teenager with parents and schoolwork to focus on, did. He kept changing my frame of reference for trying to figure him out. Here, a gift, he said, as he reached into his pockets and extended his hand. I felt a moment of trepidation at the notion of accepting another gift. The $2,000 they had given me was a weight on my conscience already. Still, it would look bad if I didn't accept. I made myself put my hand under his, and he dropped a key within a short beaded chain looped through it into my palm. That's to our place, he told me, and I mean that. Ours is in yours, too. You're free to come by any time, even if nobody's there. Kick back and watch TV, eat our food, track mud on the floor, yell at the others for tracking mud on the floor, whatever. Thank you, I said, surprising myself by actually meaning it. Are you going to come by after school, or should I meet you here again tomorrow morning? I thought on it for a second. Last night, not long before I left, Brian and I had gotten to talking about our training. When I had mentioned my morning runs, he had suggested meeting me regularly. The idea wanted to keep me up to date since I wasn't living at the group's hideout like Lisa, Alec, and Rachel were. It had made sense, and I'd agreed. It didn't hurt that Brian was the most of anyone I liked Brian the most of anyone in the group. He was easier to relate to, somehow. That wasn't to say I didn't like Lisa, but being around her made it feel like I had the sort of Damocles hanging over my head. I'll come by later, I decided aloud, knowing I might chicken out if I didn't commit somehow. Before we could get caught in another thread of conversation, I gave him a quick wave and started my run back, the key to their place clenched in my hand. Heading back home and preparing for school left me with a gradually increasing feeling of dread, like a weight sitting on my chest. I had been trying not to think of Emma's taunting and my fleeing from school with tears in my face. I spent an hour or two tossing and turning in bed, the event replaying over my head while the throbbing of my wrist jarred me awake every time I started to drift off. Beyond that, I had been pretty successful in avoiding thinking about it. Now that the prospect of going back was looming, though, it was impossible not to dwell on the subject as I headed home, got ready, and caught the bus. I couldn't help but dwell on the coming day. I still had to face the consequences of missing 2 afternoons. That was a biggie, especially since I had missed the due date for handing in my art project. I realized my art project was still in my bag, and the last time I had seen my bag had been when Sophia was standing on it, smirking at me. There was also the issue of going to Mr. Gladley's class. My God, I can't say names tonight at all. Oh, hold on. Excuse me. Just a moment, everyone. Alright. Here we go. Oh no, I closed switch on my phone. Give me 1 second. Can I get that back up? Okay, there we go. Cool. There was also the issue of going to Mr. Gladley's class. That usually sucked enough, with Madison being in class and having to do my group work with the likes of Sparky and Greg, final bosses of the series. Knowing that I had to sit there and listen to Mr. Gladley teach when I'd seen him blatantly turn his back to me before when I was being bullied, and that sucked more. This wasn't the first time I needed to psych myself up going to school, deceive myself into going and studying. Oh, excuse me. The worst days had been back in my first year of high school when the wounds of Emma's betrayal were still fresh and I wasn't yet experienced enough to anticipate the variety of things they could come up with. Back then it had been terrifying because I hadn't yet known what to expect, didn't know where or when if they would draw the line. It had been hard to go back in January. I'd spent a week in the hospital under psychiatric observation and I'd known that everyone else had heard the story. I stared out the window of the bus, watching the people in the cars. On days like this, after being publicly humiliated, getting myself to the point where I was willing to walk through the door, it was about making deals with myself and trying to look past the school day. I told myself I was going to go to Mrs. Knott's computer class. None of the trio were there, and it was pretty easy going, and I could take the time to browse the web. From there, it was just a matter of convincing myself to walk down the hall to Mr. Gladley's class. Oh my fucking God. Oi. If I just made myself do that, I promised myself I would give myself a treat. A lunch break spent reading one of the books I'd been saving, or a rare snack brought from the store after school. For the afternoon classes, I had inevitably come up with something else to look forward to, like watching a TV show I liked or working on my costume. Or I thought maybe I could look forward to hanging out with Lisa, Alec, or Brian. Outside of the part where I nearly got mauled by bitches' dogs, it had been a nice night. Thai food, five of us lounging on two couches, watching an action movie on a huge entertainment system with a surround sound. I wasn't forgetting what they were, but I rationalized that I had no reason to feel bad about spending time with them when we were, for all intents and purposes, just a group of teenagers hanging out. Besides, it was for a good cause. If they relaxed around me and if they relaxed around me and revealed secrets, right? You fucking narc, Taylor. God. Damn, girl. As I got off the bus, a pair of old notebooks in one hand, I kept all that in mind. I could relax in Mrs. Knott's class, and I could sit through the 3 90-minute classes. Maybe it occurred to me I could try and find and talk to my art teacher over lunch break. It would mean staying out of the trio's way, and I could maybe work something out as far as doing another project or at least not getting a 0. My marks were okay enough that I could probably manage passing a grade with a 0 on the midterm project, but it would still help. I wanted to do more than just pass, especially with all this crap I had to put up with. Mrs. Knott arrived at the classroom around the same time I did, and I unlocked the door to let us file in. As one of the last of 40-ish students to arrive, I'd wound up at the back of the crowd. While I waited for enough space to open up the door, I saw Sophia talking to the 3 of the girls from the class. It looked like she had just come from her track practice. Sophia was dark-skinned and black hair normally long enough to reach the small of her back, though she was currently had it in a ponytail. I couldn't help but resent the fact that even with her being a sweaty, dusty, and notorious bitch, pretty much every guy in the school would still pick her over me. She'd said something and the girls laughed. Even though I knew rationally that I probably wasn't on their list of top 5 things to talk about and they weren't likely talking about me, I felt my heart sink. I moved up. I mean, you know what? I can kind of relate. Whenever, people around me, they just laugh, I'm like, oh, they're laughing at me. I know they are. I can feel it. Even if I've never met them before in my life, it's like, haha. Look at this fucking nerd. Reading stories about a girl who can control bugs on his fucking Twitch. Blah. I moved up towards the jam of students waiting to get into the door to break the line of sight between myself and the girls. It didn't quite work. As the group of students entered the room, I would make some coffee after this chapter, so I can wake myself up. She made an exaggerated pouting expression, drawing one fingertip in a line from the corner of her eye down to her cheek like a mock tear. One of the other girls noticed and chuckled, leaning closer to Sophia as Sophia whispered something in her ear. They both laughed. My cheeks flushed with humiliation. Sophia gave me a final smirk and turned to saunter away when the other girls filed into the classroom. Kicking myself even as I did, I turned away and walked back down the hall towards the front doors of school. I knew it would be that much harder to go back tomorrow. For 1 3/4 school years, I had been putting up with this shit. I had been going against the current for a long time, and even though I was aware of the consequences I'd face if I kept missing school like this, it was so much easier to stop pushing so hard against the current and just step in the other direction. My hands jammed into my pockets, already feeling an ambivalent sort of relief. I caught the bus and back to the docks. All right. Any chat messages for me? Anything? No? Everyone just chilling? Cool. That is fine by me. I'm trying to think whether I should go make coffee now or wait until No, you know what? I'm gonna go make coffee now. I'll be right back. All right. All right, all right, all right. Hello, everyone. Oh, I have a dweebus with me. A big fucking idiot. Hello. You missed, first chapter, but that's okay. In summer, nothing really major happened. Um, I'm pretty sure you asked about whether Taylor could control, like, crabs and lobsters and stuff like that, and she did control a crab for Brian. 'Cause she goes to meet him on one of her runs. And she basically comes to the deduction that it's just not bugs she control, but she can control but anything with like a simple brain is what she has power over. Yeah, yeah, she can control crustaceans. But yeah, we can, I guess, because I got myself some coffee and put a little cinnamon in it because that shit tastes good. Taylor's a simple fool. Yeah. All right. And she saw one of the bad bitches. Oh, hello, Denger. Hello, my sweet child. Yeah, it's good. A little, not like a whole ass like dumping. Just like two or three little sprinkies of cinnamon is really good in coffee. Um, I don't use it every morning, but I do it pretty often. It's good. It's good. Um, Denger, I don't know if you watched the VOD of this, but put that whole yeah, put a whole ass cinnamon stick straight in your coffee. It'll taste real good. Um, Denger, I don't know if you watched the VOD. Um, but in summary, to the best of my ability, this is we're reading a very 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 long web serial about yeah, I know that's fine. We're reading a web serial about this world where superheroes exist, and the main character is someone who has control over bugs. She can control bugs with her mind, and it's just sort of her uh, adventures, so to speak. I'm gonna enlarge text a little bit. There we go. Just so we can see it a little bit better, because I'm leaning back to make sure my coffee doesn't spill on me. Okay. Agitation 3.2. I was pleasantly surprised to find that the bus line had ended at the old ferry that put me only 15 or 20-minute walk away from the loft that Lisa Alec bitch called home. I could be spending a fair bit of time there before I gathered enough information or earned enough trust from them to turn them into the authorities, so it was the convenience that was nice. It was a nice day, if a little bit windy. The air was crisp and cool, the sky was a brilliant and cloudless blue that was reflected in the ocean, and the sand of the beach sparkled in the light of the sun. Tourists were already crowding the railings or migrating to the beach, pinned down the corners of their beach blankets under picnic baskets and shopping bags. It was too cold to go in the water, but the view was spectacular. I enjoyed it for a few months before venturing into the crowd. I walked with my hands in my pockets, as much to protect my stuff in my pockets as to keep the worst of the chill out. Bitch, yeah. Yeah. She has powers to her power is to like turn dogs into like mini kaiju. So yeah, it's cool. It's her cool power. And she's also like not very nice, so she's kind of a bitch. Yeah. What a sinister yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like that's one of the more tamer ability. Like you just sit back. You just sit back and fucking wait. Yeah, I'm a fucking weeb. What are you gonna do about it? What the fuck are you gonna do about it, huh? It was too cold to go in the water. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like Lisa, Alec, bitch. I would get. I would kind of get why that would be a little weird out of context. Um, it was too cold to go in the water, but the view was spectacular. I enjoyed it for a few minutes before venturing into the crowd. I walked with my hands in my pockets, and as much to protect my stuff in my pockets. Like, oh, I already read that. Oopsie. Living in Brockton Bay, you learn stuff like that, how to protect yourself and what to watch for. I know that the Vietnamese teenagers who were leaning against the railing of the boardwalk were members of the ABB, even if they weren't wearing their gang colors, because the only Asian kids in Brockton Bay had that much swagger were already part of Lung's gang. I knew the tattoo on the arm of the guy lifting boxes into the florist van was read erase, extinguish, eradicate, meant the guy was a white supremacist because it had the letter E repeated 3 times. In one of the previous chapters, what's his superpower? I'm a massive gun. Yeah, exactly. We've established that there's like a gang of superpowered Nazis or white supremacists called Empire 88. And I guess this dude's like one of their cronies. The man in the uniform who was talking to the shop owner wasn't a cop or security guard, but one of the enforcers the merchants of the boardwalk hired to keep the undersides from making trouble. They were why Brockton Bay didn't have as much beggars, addicts, or people wearing gang colors hanging around. If your presence offended or worried the tourists, they would step in to scare you off. If someone shoplifted or panhandled in the boardwalk, they had ran the risk that 1 or 2 enforcers would drag them behind one of the shops and teach them a lesson. Anything more serious than shoplifting or panhandling, well, there was always someone on duty in the floating base to protect her at headquarters. Any of the store owners or employees could call the likes of Miss Militia, Armsmaster, or Triumph in, give it a minute. The E. Yeah. The tourism revenue the boardwalk picked up earned a lot of goodwill from government and government-sponsored capes. Could you imagine, like, getting robbed? Well, I mean, don't imagine that. That's bad. Don't you dare imagine that. Could you imagine, like, being a humble supermarket worker? All of a sudden, some dude with superpowers like comes in to rob you, and you call in a fucking superhero to burst through the wall. I imagine. Yeah, please stop imagining being robbed. Stop it. Stop. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just imagining like a superhero bursting through the walls of your supermarket, causing like more property damage than even necessary. No, please. Please stop imagining being robbed. No, stop, no, please, why? I headed off the boardwalk and into one of the alleys leading into the docks. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw one of the uniformed enforcers staring at me. I wondered what he was thinking. Good kids didn't hang out at the docks, and I doubted I looked the part of a guileless tourist. The abandoned factories, warehouses, and garages of the docks were all blended into one very quickly. The colors of the building exteriors weren't enough from one another to make buildings recognizable, and the piles of garbage that I had been unconsciously noting my previous visit had all shifted locations or been replaced. I found myself glad for the artistic graffiti in the row of weed-entangled power lines I could use as landmarks. I did not want to get lost. Not here. As I arrived at the top of the huge factory in the Redmond welding sign, I found myself wondering whether I should knock or just go on up. I didn't have to decide. The door opened just a second after I'd come. It was Brian, and he looked suspicious to see me as I was to see him. "Hey," he said. "Lisa said you'd arrived. I thought you had school." Took me a few seconds to get my mental footing. Any demonstration or mention of Lisa's powers kind of had a way doing that to me. So yeah, the spectrum of like powers you have right now is like, you know, turning dogs into monstrosities and knowing things. And controlling bugs, like, probably somewhere in the middle of that, I guess. So that's like the spectrum of powers you have going on right now. And that was at the top of having a conversation, and that was on top of having a conversation sprung on me without the chance to prepare. Changed my mind, I said lamely. Huh, well, come on up. We headed upstairs. I saw Brian was wearing different clothes than what he had been wearing earlier that morning. What he was wearing now bore a closer resemblance to his clothes from the day before. A green sleeveless t-shirt and black slacks with a lightweight fabric, like yoga pants or something. He's showing off his dumpy. From mildly inconvenient to entirely sinister. Yeah, you just wait. You think that's like the worst this series has to offer as far as like screwed up powers go? Because the lovely thing is the series is a lot like JoJo in a way. You could have the stand with the dumbest power in existence, but if you were smart enough, you could use that to your advantage. It's not the powers that people have in this series; it's how they make them work in their favor, and they're all really cool to the way that they are presented. Alec was waiting, leaning against the back of a couch as we entered the living room. He was wearing a t-shirt with some cartoon or video game character on it and basketball shorts. He stood straight as he noticed us. Alec and I were sparring, Brian told me. Lisa's on the phone in the kitchen. Rachel and her dogs are in her room. You can watch us if you want, but no pressure. Feel free to use the TV or put on a DVD or play a video game. She's a gamer girl. She's a gamer girl. Gamer girl. Nut King calls shit. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You could have like the dumbest power, but it's how you use it that makes you good. Because there are people in this series that all their power is just like, I can make things, and that's like, all right, great, but it's what they make. It's what they can make. That's like, you know, the good stuff. Don't save over any of my files, dork, Alex said. He started it with the dork thing last night. It wasn't exactly malicious, but it grated. My name is Taylor, not dork, and I wouldn't do that if I told him. Turning to Brian, I'll watch if it's cool. Brian smiled and nodded, and while I moved to kneel on the couch and watched them over the back of it. As it turned out, this was less of a sparring session than an attempt on Brian's part to give a less than fully committed Alex some basic lessons on hand-to-hand fighting. It was one-sided, and not just because Alec wasn't trying very hard. Alec was an average 15-year-old guy in that he had little muscle worth speaking about. Brian, by contrast, was fit. He wasn't big in the sense of a bodybuilder or someone who had just exercised to pack on muscle like you saw with some people just out of prison. It was a little more streamlined than that. You could see the raised line of a vein running down his bicep, and the definition of his chest showed through his shirt. He's a fucking thick lad. Brian's a unit. Absolute unit. Besides the difference in raw physical power, there was also the age and height gap. Alec was 2 or 3 years younger and nearly a foot shorter. That meant Brian had more reach, and I'm not just referring to the length of his arms. When he stepped forward or backward, he moved further. He covered more ground, which put Alec on the defensive, and since Brian was stronger, that put Alec in a bad position. Brian stood without much of a fighting stance, hands at his sides, bouncing just a little where he stood. Twice in a row, I'd watched Alex swing a punch, only for Brian to lean out of the way. The second time Alec's arm flew by, Brian leaned in and jabbed Alec in the center of the chest. It didn't look like much of a punch, but Alex still sort of woofed out of breath and stepped back. I keep telling you, Brian said, you're throwing punches like you'd throw a basketball. Don't bring your arm so far back before you punch. You're just broadcasting what you're about to do, and it doesn't add enough power to hit to be worth that. What am I supposed to do then? Look at how I'm standing. Arms up, bent. Then I just extend my arm, wrist straight. Fast enough that whoever I'm hitting generally can't step out of the way, so they've got to either take it or block it. But you weren't standing like that 10 seconds ago when I was punching you, Alec complained. I left the opening to see if you would take advantage of it, Brian replied. And I didn't, Alec noted with a sigh. Beefy. I'm, I'm not just referring to the length of his arms. I'm referring to the girth of his dick. He's thick in more ways than one, if you know what I'm saying. Brian shook his head. Well, fuck this then, Alex said. If you're going to go on easy on me and still kick my ass, I don't see the point. You should learn how to fight, Brian said. I'll do it like I have been and bring my taser, was Alex's response. One poke and they're not cold. Better than any punch. And if the taser breaks or you lose it? Brian asked. He didn't have... I for some reason, when I read this in my head, Brian... the first time I read this over, without my voice... that's usually what reading entails, yeah. Brian, for some reason, sounded like the Arbiter from Halo to me. I'm trying to, like, emulate my inner Keith David, but I don't have nearly as much of a buttery smooth voice as Keith David has, but I'm trying. I'm really trying here. He needn't have bothered. Alec was already sitting himself down in the front of the TV, remote in one hand and game controller in the other. Brian's disappointment was palpable. I just fuck it. I'm playing video games. Mind giving me a few quick pointers? I asked. Alex sniggered, Beavis and Butthead style. Grow up, Alec, Brian said. If you want to quit, fine, but don't be a dick. He turned to me and flashed that boyish smile. Then we started. I knew he was going easy on me, but he was still a damn tough teacher. Make two fists. No, don't wrap your arms or your finger behind over your thumbs. You'll do more damage to your hands than you will to the person you're hitting with if you do that. That's better. Now jab me, okay? I tried to emulate what he'd been describing to Alec. Arms up, bent, and extending my arm, fist with a snap. He caught my right hand in his left. Okay, now you're going to do two things different. Step into the jab so you've got your body's momentum behind the hit, and on top of your arm's power. Second, I want your left arms up as you're jabbing with your right and vice versa. If I see the chance, I'm going to pop you one on the shoulder or the ribs, so be ready to fend me off. I winced at the idea but played along. I jabbed. He stepped away and he jabbed me in the shoulder. He didn't hit as hard as he could have. I think he only hit as hard as it took to make it hurt and drive the lesson home, but I suddenly felt a stab of sympathy for Alec. Things continued in that vein. Brian didn't stay on the topic too long. When I finished struggling with something, he shifted gears to another area that complemented or built on what I was having problems with. When I failed for the fifth time to fend off his retaliatory jabs in my shoulders and ribs, he started talking about posture. Rest your weight on the balls of your feet. I tried, then told him, I feel like I'm going to tip over backwards if you hit me. He bent down to check, and I lifted my toes 2 or 3 inches off the ground to demonstrate how I had weight balanced on my heels. No, Taylor, the balls of your feet. He raised his bare foot and pointed at the padded part between his toes and the bridge of his foot. I hadn't realized how many, like, unclosed quotations there are in this. I'm kind of like, I forget, the worm is a little wonky to start out with. But I promise you guys, it gets better. The writing gets way better. Art evolution's a thing. That's my rant. Because I love this series so much, and I don't want to see you guys like drop it because I'm bad mouthing it. I'm allowed to criticize my gamer girl feet. Going from writing advice to gamer girl feet. Yes, we have achieved gamer feet. Congratulations, everyone. We did it. How is that a ball? I asked, raising my own foot to point to the vaguely spherical part of the foot where you step where the ankle met the ground. This is only the part that looks like ball-like. You guys are so lame, I heard Alec chimed in without turning around. Brian swatted him in the back of the head. We moved on from posture. Tell that to webcomic artists. Yeah, I know. By art evolution, I mean, like, writing evolution, too. And not, I guess if your series art starts out godly and only gets godlier, But that's not the case for most of these things, me included. We moved on from posture. Brian's recommendations on balancing did help to self-defense again. From there, we changed topics to the material side of things, both for me and my opponent. So I throw a punch again, aiming to put my fist through them. I confirmed. Right, Brian said. Instead of trying to just make contact with the point where your hand meets your body. What about it when they're attacking me? Best bet? Don't give them a chance. Stay aggressive and keep them on their heels. If neither of you have formal training, then what's going to give you the best odds? They won't be able to turn the tables on you unless you make a mistake, or they can guess what you're going to do as you do it. Which is why you might mix it up. Rights, left, punches, jabs, elbow, knee, kicks. If you're bigger and stronger than they are, you can try tackling them to the ground. With all of that, you can stay on them until they aren't in the position to fight back. Are you formally trained in anything? I asked. I suspected he was, since the only other way for him to know as much was he was demonstrating was to have actually been good in a number of fights, and I wasn't thinking that he seemed to be the type to fight without reason. He hedged. My dad was a boxer when he was in the service, and he taught me some when I was little. I moved on to the other stuff to my own, karate, taekwondo, krav maga, but nothing really held my interest. I only took a few weeks or month of classes for each. I know enough and keep in shape, which is enough to hold my own against anyone who isn't a black belt or in whichever, which is the important thing, I think. Keeping up the more serious martial artist is the full-time job, and you're still going to run into people who are better than you, so I don't see the point in stressing too much over it. I nodded. We moved on the key areas to attack. Brian pointed to the body parts in question as he explained. Eyes, nose, temple, chin, and throat are the areas above the shoulder. Teeth or ears if you can hit hard enough. I can, you can't. Sure, I said. I wasn't offended by his bluntness. He was stronger than me, so he had more options. Tiptoeing around that didn't do either of us any favors. Below the shoulders, diaphragm, kidney, groin, knee, bridge of the foot, toes. Elbow's a good one too if you can do anything about it. He took my wrist in his left hand and my shoulder in his right, extending my arm straight as he brought his knee up to gently tap the outside of my elbow. I could see how he would have screwed it up or broken my arm if he'd done it at full strength. He went on, but in my experience it doesn't come often enough to worry about. It was a little disquieting to hear Brian methodically describing how to break a human being. I saw him as a nice guy if I ignored his career choice. These are, by the way, Dinger, these people she's surrounding herself with, they are villains. Quote-unquote villains of this universe. Because there are established superheroes and villains. So these guys that she is with right now are, in fact, villains. But as you can see, they seem like pretty alright people. They're not bad guys, they're just bad guys. Not entirely by accident, I changed the subject. I was thinking about investing in a weapon for hand-to-hand. When I was fighting Lung, fists were no good, and I found myself really wanting a knife or a baton or something. Don't know if they would have been any good against his armor, but, I trailed off. Makes sense. You don't have a lot in the way of upper body strength. No offense. None taken. I tried to get something like a push-up routine going, but I got sick of it fast. At least with running, there's a sense of going places. You get the scenery. I feel that. That is my entire philosophy during this pandemic. I'm going somewhere. Because working out at home is boring as all shit. At least at a gym, I can, eye the other guy from across the gym who's, lifting the gym itself. And I can be like, yeah, I'm going to be that guy one day. But at home, you're just comparing yourself to you. I want to see, Beefy McShatterson and be like, yes, I want to be you when I grow up. When I become a big gym boy. Push-ups get repetitive, yeah. Well, the boss is good about supplying us with gear. Lisa's the one who talks to him, and she's talking to him right now, in fact. Put in a word with her if you want something like that. It's untraceable, too, so the good guys aren't going to be tracing any serial numbers or whatever from your weapon back to your purchase. The fact that Lisa was talking to their boss made me very curious all of a sudden. That said, I couldn't really traipse in to eavesdrop without being suspicious. Instead, since Lisa was out of earshot, I thought to seize the opportunity to ask, so, who's this boss of ours? Brian and Alex exchanged a look. And they didn't immediately say, I wondered if I pushed too far. Had I been too nosy? Figured you'd ask, Brian said. Thing is, we don't know. But I do. What? I asked. We have an anonymous sponsor? It's really fucking weird, yeah. Alex said, then hammered a button on the game controller. Boom! Triple headshot. Look, fucking gamer. Gamer talk. Gamer talk right here. He is a pro gamer. Alex, stay focused. Brian sighed his words with a tone suggesting he didn't expect to be listened to. Alec bobbed his head in a nod, leaving his eyes not leaving the television, before adding, "It's weird, but it's basically like free money. A good team contacts access to everything we need for stuff and pretty much no drawbacks." Lisa knows, I think. But she says when we joined the Undersiders, she made a deal that she was going to keep quiet on the subject. I'm not sure if that meant she knows who he is or if it just keep her mouth shut if her powers tell her. "So let me get this straight," I said. "That guy gathers you all together, offers you a salary, and what? Doesn't ask for anything in return?" Brian shrugged. "He asks us to do jobs, but most of the time it's stuff we do anyway, and if we say no, he doesn't make any issue of it." How does one activate a triple motherfucking headshot? He's a pro gamer. That's all I can tell you. Pro gamer. "What kind of jobs does he ask us to do?" Lisa's voice drawled behind me. "This. Pull up your socks, boys and girls, because we're robbing a bank." Oh, this is the bank heist arc. Okay. Okie dokie. Alright. Take a sip of my coffee. Check chat real quick. Alrighty. Agitation 3.3. "No," Brian intoned. "Such a bad idea." Lisa still had the phone in her hand. Bitch had arrived behind her and stood out in stark contrast to Lisa's jeans, sweater, and light ponytail, with an army jacket and virtually no paid attention to her hair. The littlest of her dogs, the one-eyed, one-eared terrier, trailed behind her. "Come on," Lisa wheeled. "It's the rite of passage for dastardly criminals like us." "Robbing a bank is moronic. We've been over this." Brian closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "You know what the average haul is like for hitting a bank." Lisa paused. 20,000? "Exactly. It's not millions like you see people getting away with in the movies. Banks don't keep a lot of loose cash on hand, so we'd be pulling in less than we would for most other jobs. Account for costs and the fact that this Brockton fucking Bay, where banks have little more reason to keep the amount of cash in their vaults to a minimum, we'd be bringing in 12 to 16 thou. Divided 5 ways, it's what? $2,000 or $3,000 each?" "I could do with an extra 3,000 to spend," Alex said, putting down his game controller and shifting his position on the couch to follow the conversation better. "On what?" Brian asked. When Alex shrugged, Brian sighed and explained. "It's a horrible payoff for the amount of risk involved. There's 3 big superhero teams in the city. Figure there's another dozen heroes that fly solo and we're almost guaranteed to get into a fight." Who the fuck says pull up your socks? She does. She does. Lisa does. So, bitch spoke for the first time. "We win fights. We won before we had her." She raised her chin in my direction, and she said that when she said that last word. "We won because we picked our battles. We wouldn't have that option if we were cooped up in the bank and waiting for them to come to us, letting them decide how and where the fight happened." Lisa nodded and smiled as he spoke. I thought for a second that she was going to say something, but she didn't. Brian continued, getting passionate as he ranted. "We won't be able to slip away like we have when things got out of control in the past. Can't avoid the fight if we wanted to get away with anything worth taking. The bank is going to have layers of protection, iron bars, vault doors, whatever. Even with your powers, Lisa, there's a limit to how fast we can get through those. At the time we spend managing hostages and making a safe exit, I pretty much guarantee that there will be a time for a cape to get wind of the robbery and slow us down even more." Alex said, "I kind of want to do it anyways. Hitting a bank gets you on the front page. That's huge for our rep." "The runt is right," bitch said. Brian grumbled. "Not fucking up is better than our reputation in the long run." His deep voice was really good for grumbling. He's got a good grumble. It's a grumbly boy. Alec looked at me. What do you think? I'd almost forgotten I was part of this discussion. The last thing I wanted was to rob a bank. Hostages could get hurt. The fact that it would potentially put me on the front page of the paper wasn't a high point either. If I ever wanted to drop all the supervillain ruse and become a hero in good standing, I ventured. I think Brian makes good cases. Makes a good case. It seems reckless. Bitch snorted. I think I saw Alec roll his eyes. Lisa leaned forward. He does make good points, but I have better ones. Hear me out? The rest of us turned our attention to her. Though Bitch had made a frown that it seemed like it would have taken a lot to convince him. Oh, Brian. Not Bitch. Brian. Okay, so Brian said similar stuff before we hit the casino a few weeks ago. So I was expecting this. But it's not as bad as it sounds. The boss wants us to do a job at a very specific time. I got the sense he was willing to offer a fair bit if we went the extra mile, and I negotiated a pretty good deal. The bank robbery was my idea, and he liked it. According to him, the Protectorate is busy with an event on Thursday just outside of town. That's part of the reason the timing is so important. If we act then, there's almost no chance we'll have to deal with them. If we hit the Bay Central downtown, that's the biggest bank in Brockton Bay, I interrupted her, half still disbelieving. So everything I said about them having security and being careful is doubly true. Brian added, If we hit Bay Central downtown, Lisa repeating herself, ignoring us, then we're hitting a location just a mile from Arcadia High, where most of the wards go to school. Given jurisdictions, New Wave won't be able to jump on us without stepping on the ward's toes, which pretty much guarantees we go up against the junior superheroes. With me so far? We all nodded and murmured in agreement. Figure that's happening in the middle of the day, and they won't be able to slip away to stop a robbery without drawing attention. People know the wards are attending Arcadia and just don't know who they are. So everyone's constantly watching for that. Since they can't have 6 or 7 of the same kids just disappearing from class every time the wards go off to foil a crime without without giving away the show, chances are that we go up against a couple of their half-strongest members, or one of them strongest with a group of ones with less amazing powers. We can beat them. Okay, Brian begrudged. I'll accept that we'd probably do all right in those circumstances, but... Lisa interrupted him. I also got the boss to agree to match us for 2-for-1 for the hall. We bring in 15 grand, he pays us 30, or he gives us enough money to bring our total up to 25, whichever is more in the end. So we could walk away with $2,000 and he'd pay us $23,000. So long as we don't wind up in the jail, we're guaranteed $5,000 apiece, bare minimum. Brian's eyes widened. That's insane. Why would he do that? And, Lisa grinned, he'll cover all of our costs, just this once, equipment, information, bribes if we want them. Why? Echoed Brian's question earlier, disbelieving. Lisa was throwing around sums of money that I couldn't even wrap my head around. I had never even had more than $500 in my pocket and my $500 in my bank account. Me neither. We have a we have a we've got a bot in the chat. Say hello to the bot, everyone. The bot has come to listen to me read to a bot. Please stay. We've got a bot asking me to buy followers. No, I think I'm good, bot. Thank you very much. Be gone, bot. Yeah, we have a bot in the chat, everyone. Please, don't be kind to the bot. The bot does not deserve your respect. It's asking me to probably get my credit card completely fraudulated. Oh god, where was I? Oh yeah, here we go. Because he's sponsoring us, and it stands to reason he doesn't want to fund a team of nobodies. We manage this, and we won't be nobodies. That, and he really wants us to do a job at that particular time. Gee, I wonder why. Carly G. Do I have to buy them? Yeah, you have to buy them with Xbox Live gift cards. Please, please, everybody, pitch in and give me your Apple gift card codes. We have to get me to 50 followers tonight. Please. Please, I beg of you. Drop your social security number or credit card in the chat. I'll thank you in the long run by showing you a picture of my non-existent titties. There was a few moments of silence as everyone considered the deal. I was friendly trying to think of a way to convince these guys it was a bad idea. A bank robbery could get me arrested. Worse, it could lead me or bystanders getting hurt or killed. You know, I gotta say, we oh shit, to set up the oh shit, to set up as a benefactor. No, you couldn't be farther off, Denger. But I'm not gonna spoil it for you. That'll get revealed soon enough. It's not a hero, but you're good. Good guess. Good guess. Good guess. Good thinking. Listen, I gotta be going in some right direction. I had a Twitch bot in my chat. That means we have like it's all up from here, right? That's gotta be a good sign. A bank robbery could get me arrested. Worse, it could lead to me or a bystander getting hurt or killed. Brian beat me to it. The risk to reward still isn't great. $5,000 each for hitting what may be the most fortified location in Brockton Bay and almost a guaranteed confrontation with the wards. Second most fortified location, Lisa countered. Protectorate headquarters is the first. Fair point, Brian said, but my argument stands. It'll be more than $5,000 for each of us, I guarantee you, Lisa told him. It's the biggest bank in Brockton Bay. It's also the hub of cash distribution for the entire county. The entire country? Ooh, that's a lot of cash. Said cash gets transferred in and out by armored cars on a regular schedule. So why don't we hit one of the cars? Alec asked. They have ride-alongs or aerial covering from various members of the wards and protectorate, so we'd be caught in a fight with one another with another cape from minute one. Same problem that Brian's talking about. As the far as getting caught up in a fight, difficulty accessing the money before shit goes down, yada yada. Anyway, the Brockton Bay Central has cars coming in twice a week and leaving 4 times a week. We hit on a Thursday just after noon, and it should be the best day in time for the sheer size of the lake. The sheer size of the take! You see, I don't know why my eyes love to, like, fuck up T and L in this font, but it does. My eyes love to play tricks on me with that. Only way we're getting away with less than 30,000 is if we fuck up. What the boss is offering, that's 90,000. She folded her arms. Brian sighed long and loud. Well, you got me, I guess. It sounds good. Lisa turned to Alec. There wasn't any resistance to be found there. He just said, fuck yeah, I'm in. Bitch didn't need convincing any more than Alec did. She nodded once and then turned her attention to the scarred little dog. Then everyone looked at me. Well, what would I be doing? I asked nervously, hoping for it to stall or find holes in the plan that I could use to argue against it. So Lisa outlined a general plan. Brian made suggestions, good ones, and the plan was adjusted accordingly. I realized with a growing disappointment and a knot of anxiety in my gut that it was almost inevitably going to happen. Arguing against the bank robbery at this point would hurt my undercover operation more than it helped anyone. With that in mind, I began offering suggestions that I hoped would minimize the possibility of disaster. The way I saw it, if I helped things go smoothly, it would help my scheme to get info on the Undersiders and their boss. It would minimize the chance that someone would panic or be reckless and get a civilian hurt. I think it would feel worse if it happened there than I would about going to jail. Surf gang. The discussions went on for a while. At one point, Lisa got her laptop and we debated entrance and exit strategies while she sketched out a map of the bank's layout. It was uncanny seeing her power at work. She copied a satellite image of the bank from a web search into a paint program, and then drew over it with a thick bold lines to show how the rooms were laid out. With another search and a single picture of the bank manager standing in front of the desk, she was able to mark out where the manager's desk was. That wouldn't have been too amazing, but without pausing, she then went on to mark where the tellers were, as well as the vaults, the vault doors, and the enclosed rooms that held the safety deposit boxes. She noted where the fuse box and air conditioning vents were, but we decided we wouldn't mess with either of those. That stuff was cool in movies, but didn't do much good in real life. Besides, this was a robbery, not a heist. While we worked, Alec got restless. What distinguishes a heist from a robbery? I never thought of it that way. I'm guessing a heist is obviously on like a grander scale. But can I suggest blowing up the... Yeah, just kaboom it. No one gets the money. While we worked, Alec got restless and went to make an early lunch. Of the four of us, I got the impression he had the least to contribute, at least strategically, that he knew it. I wasn't sure if he just didn't have a very tactical mindset or if it just didn't care much about the planning stage of these things. My assumptions led to the latter, as he seemed more willing to go with the flow than Brian or Lisa. He brought a plate of pizza pockets, gamer fuel, along with assorted sodas, and we all ate as we wrapped up the plan. All right, Brian said, as Lisa shut her laptop. I think we have a general idea of what we're doing. We know how to get in, and we know who does what when we're inside, and we know how we get out. Keeping in mind that no plan survives contact with the enemy, I think the odds are still pretty good. So, the enemy, I said, resisting the urge to wince at the realization that I would be going up against good guys. My only experience fighting in the costumes or even just fighting is against Lung, and that didn't go very well. Don't sell yourself short, Brian said. You did better than most. I'll rephrase, I said. It could have gone better. We're going up against the wards, and they aren't pushovers. Brian nodded. True, let's talk strategy and weaknesses. You know who the wards are? I shrugged. I've researched them. I've seen them on TV. That doesn't mean I know the important stuff. Me entendo. True gamer fuel. I would like Doritos and Mountain Dew for dinner, please. Sure, he said. Let's go down the list. Team leader, Aegis. You'd think he has a standard Alexandria package. Flight, super strength, and invincibility, but this isn't exactly right. He does fly, but the other two powers work differently than you'd expect. See, he isn't invincible. He just doesn't have any weak points. His entire biology is filled, so he has many redundancies and reinforcements that you just can't put him down. Throw sand in his eyes, and he can still see by sensing the light on his skin. Cut his throat, and it doesn't bleed any more than the back of a hand would. The guy has an arm cut off, and it was attached and working fine the next day. Stab him through the heart, and another organ takes over the necessary functions. Not that we're stabbing anyone in the heart. I made a hopeful half-question, half-statement. No, well, wouldn't be a bad idea to stab Aegis through the heart just to slow him down. If you did with something big enough, the guy's like a zombie. He gets back up within seconds of you beating him down. Keeps coming at you until you're too tired to fight back or you make a mistake. And he's super strong? I asked. Brian shook his head. Lisa, you want to field this one? She did. Aegis isn't strong, but he can abuse his body in ways that make it seem like he is. He can throw punches hard enough that they'd break his hand, mangle his joints, and tear his muscles, and his body just takes it. He has no reason to hold back, and he doesn't need to waste any time protecting himself from you. He can also draw on adrenaline. You've heard stories about how little old grandmothers lifted cars off the ground to save their grandkids? I nodded. Alexandria? Yeah. So basically, in this universe, there are like 3 heroes that are the strongest, and they're called the Triumvirate. And Alexandria is one of them. She's kind of like female Superman, but she has like insane photographic memory, considering why she's called Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria. There are 2 more of them, and one of them is my favorite character in the entire freaking series, but we will see. We'll see plenty of him later. And that's the adrenaline at work, and Aegis can do that for hours at a stretch. His body doesn't run out of steam, and he doesn't get tired. He just doesn't exhaust his reserve of adrenaline. He just keeps going. So how do you stop him? I asked. You don't, really. Brian said. The best bet is to keep him occupied, keep him sufficiently distracted Or stick him somewhere he can't escape. Trap him in a dumpster and throw him in a river and you can get a few minutes of relief, which is all harder than it sounds. He's the team captain and he isn't stupid. Rachel, stick your dogs on him. A 2-ton canine or two should keep him out of our hair until we're ready to run. I don't need to hold back, bitch said, her eyebrows quirked. For once, no, go nuts. Just so you know, don't kill him. Just, don't kill him. Alec, you're the backup there. Keep an eye on Agus, even see if you can't use your powers to throw him off. Buy time enough for a dog to set his jaws on him and he's probably out of action. Sure, Alec said. Brian extended his two fingers and tapped the second. Number 2, clock blocker. Let it be known, I fucking hate people who mess with time. He stops time if I remember. Right, I inquired. As much to stay in the conversation to get the clarification. More specific than that, Brian said, he can stop time whenever he can stop the time for whatever he touches. The person or object he touches is basically put on pause for anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. Only good thing is that he doesn't control how long it's going to last. But if he gets his hands on you, you're out of action. He'll either stand next to you and wait until you start moving, then touch you again, or he'll just tie you up in chains and handcuffs so when his power wears off, you're already in custody. Long story short, he touches you, you're boned, Alex said. The upside is whoever he touches is almost untouchable. Can't be hurt, can't be moved, period. He uses that defensively, and he can do stuff like throw paper or cloth in the air and freeze it in time, making an unbreakable shield. You don't want to run into something that's frozen. A car that drove into the side of a piece of paper that Clockblocker had touched would be cut in two before it budged the paper. The innuendos in this story. I mean, Alec is like a 15-year-old, so a 15-year-old guy especially, so I expect like him to say stupid shit like this. I kind of want to know how old the author was when he started writing this. I actually want to. I don't know if his like age is online. I don't think he made that public. I have a high doubt that he made it public. Also, oh, you're talking about Clock Blocker. Oh. There's actually, there's actually an explanation behind the name. It's a lot. It's a lot. Like, I mean, obviously, it's just, cock blocker. Yeah. Again, he's a kid, so I expect. If I was a superhero that could stop them, I'd probably call myself Clock Blocker too. Thinking about it, I probably would do the same thing. Noted, I said. Brian continued. The third heavy hitter on the wards is Vista. You know the myth about the capes that get their powers young and are exponentially more powerful? This is one of the kids who keeps the myth alive. Clock Blocker is a sort of one-trick pony. His trick involves screwing with one of the key forces of our universe, but this one's just a thing. Vista also messes with the physics on a fundamental level, but she's versatile. 12 years old and she has the power to reshape space. She can stretch a building like taffy, so it's twice as tall or squeeze two sidewalks closer so she can cross the street with a single step. Her weakness, Lisa said, is the Manton effect. She turned her attention to me. Do you know what that is? I've heard it mentioned before, but I don't know the details. Wherever our powers come from, they also came with some limitations. For most of us, there's restrictions there's restrictions about using our powers on living things. The reach of power generally stops out the outside. Ow! I just bit my lip. Ow. That's it. I'm dying live on stream. You guys are going to hear audio of me dying live. Jesus Christ. Ow. Holy shit. Okay, we're good. The reach of our powers generally stops outside of a person or animal's body. There's exceptions for the people with powers that only work on living things, like you, Alec, and Rachel. The long and the short of it is the Manson effect is mostly why telekinesis can't just reach into your chest and crush your heart. Most people who can create force fields can create the ones through the middle of your body and cut you in two. Narwhal can. Alec cut in. I said most. Lisa said, Why these restrictions exist is a question nearly as big as where we got our powers came from. We got our powers in the first place. The capes that can get around the Manson effect are among the strongest of us. I nodded slowly, wondering if it had anything to do with why Lung didn't burn himself, but I didn't want to get further off topic. And Vista? Vista can stretch and compress space. She can also do funny things with gravity. The thing is, the Manson effect keeps her from stretching or compressing you. It makes altering an area a lot harder for her if there's more people in the space. So if all of us are in one room, chances are she won't be able to affect the whole room. But, Brian added, wiping a string of cheese from the corner of his lip, every time we run into her, she's been faster and overall more powerful with her power, and she's had new tricks. Every time she's on the battlefield, the second thing becomes harder for us. We take her down sooner rather than later. Aegis, Clock Blocker, Vista. Those are the ones we're most likely to run into, and whoever winds up coming, they're the ones you have to deal with, or we're fucked. Let's quickly get through this. Kid win. Oh, let's Tinker, Lisa said. Flying skateboard, laser pistols, high-tech visor are staples for him. Expect something new, depending on what he's come up with in his workshop. He's mobile, but not threatening. Triumph? Brian asked. He turned 18 and graduated the Protectorate. Don't have to worry about him, Lisa said. Gallant. Glory Girl's on and off boyfriend. He pretends to be a tinker in the same vein as Kid Win, but I just think he runs around in a second-hand armor with a fresh paint job. His thing is that he's blasts of light. Getting hit by one feels like a punch in the gut, but blasts also mess with your feelings. Make you sad, make you scared, ashamed, giddy, whatever. Not that bad unless you get hit by a bunch. Don't. That just leaves Shadowstalker. Bloodthirsty bitch. Brian scowled. When they're flying... Yeah, they're normal people. They're normal people, but the I don't want to say the vast majority, but a lot. It's not uncommon to see superpowers. That's pretty common. It's kind of like a 50-50 split, I would say. That's just a guesstimate from me. Wouldn't a flying skateboard just be a flyboard? Yeah, I guess. If it functions as a skateboard and a flyboard, then I don't know what you would call that. Alec explained it to me. She's got it in her head that Brian is her nemesis, her number one enemy and her dark opposite. She's been going after him every chance she gets. She was a true solo hero, Tattletale said, vigilante of the night until she went too far and nearly killed someone, nailing him to a wall with one of her crossbows. The local heroes were called in and she got arrested and made some sort of deal. Now she's a probationary, I can't speak, member of the wards with the condition that she's using tranquilizer bolts and non-lethal ammo for her crossbow. Which she isn't, Brian growled. And at least not when she comes after me. That arrow she shot through my side had a fucking arrowhead on it. You can still grind. That's good. Yeah, it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid skate flyboard. Telltale shook her head. Her powers and Brian's powers have a weird interaction with one another. Shadowstalker can transform. She becomes extremely lightweight, can pass through glass and thin walls, and she's nearly invisible. Only thing is, while she and the stuff she carries are all wispy in her transformed state, the stuff she shoots with her crossbows only stays there for half a second. Then the effect wears off and it's a regular arrow flying towards you. So she can leap from rooftops, almost impossible to see, hard to touch, and while she's shooting very real arrows at you. So what do? I asked. Her power doesn't work well when she's inside Brian's darkness, for whatever reason. She's still as fast, isn't as fast as agile. He can see her better, and she can see him in the darkness, Telltale told me. So it becomes something of a very intense game of tag, with one very fast person that's essentially blind and deaf but carrying lethal weapons, while Brian, on the other hand, is trying to take her out without getting shot. Let's avoid that, Brian said. Hybrid board, yeah. It's too time-consuming, and she may want to use that kind of scenario just to delay us. So just don't get shot. If you see her or the opportunity, inform the team and do your best to take her down without losing sight of a priority target. So that's the plan, then? I said, so many maybes? That's the way these things go, Taylor, Brian said. his tone a bit tense. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering all the bases. Oh, I didn't mean to sound like I was criticizing your plan. I said, our plan, Brian interrupted. I didn't want to think of it that way. Instead, I said, I'm a touch nervous, is all. You don't have to come. Bitch said, her tone a touch too casual. In all seriousness, Brian told me, if you're having second thoughts, I am, I admitted. As well as third thoughts, fourth thoughts, and so on. But I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm coming with. Good, Brian replied. Then we've got the rest of tomorrow to prepare. Taylor, you can meet me on your run first thing. I'll have a cell phone for you, and you can text Lisa with anything you'll think you'll need, like those weapons you were talking about. Look up models and brands ahead of time if you want something specific. What's your number? I asked. I'll put it in your phone before I give it to you. Lisa, you confirm the job with the boss. Talk to him about other stuff. Got it. So unless there's anything else, I think we just planned a bank robbery. Unless there's anything else, I think we just planned a bank robbery before noon. Lisa said with a grin. I looked at the digital clock displayed on the TV. Sure enough, it was 11:30. I couldn't help but wonder if that was a good thing. Take a sip of my water. Take a sip of my water. Actually, I'm going to go throw away some trash. I'll be right back. Who left? Which one of you fuckers just left my stream? Yes. Guys, stop making fun of me. Stop it. I mean, I'm insecure about this kind of stuff. Isn't it true that like warm water is better for your voice than like room temperature water is better for your voice than like straight cold water? Stop making fun of me. Yeah? Okay, I was right. I left some bottles out to get warm for the stream. That's what I've been drinking. Noted. Good to know. I'm doing that from now on. All right. Oh no, my voice is fine. My voice is perfectly fine right now. I was just curious. I mean, in future, I'm probably gonna go, like, gargle some honey. Stream me gargling honey, just disgustingly close up in my fucking mouth. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Absolutely. I'm gonna get my shitty 2010s, like early 2010 webcam, and I'm gonna go gargle some honey. Just for views. Hopefully the view bot comes back and buys me like 400 followers with Apple gift cards. Someone his mother. Shut the. I don't have a raspy smoker voice. Shut the fuck up. I don't have a raspy smoker voice. No. Fuck off. I don't. I don't have a raspy smoker voice. I just have a natural rasp to my voice. I'm sorry. God. Do Ben Shapiro? Do you want me to narrate the whole thing in Ben Shapiro? Because the facts don't care about your feelings. So anyway, we're reading this book. It's called Worm.
but there are people who are liberals in it. That's not good. That's no good. I don't like the liberal populace, and the facts don't care about your feelings. But the main character is a woman, and I don't really like that because women are inferior. I tell my wife that every morning. But I digress. Um,
We should. You know what? You know what? You know what we'll do. I had this idea on my walk today, and I wanna hear your guys' opinions on it because Worm gets like super fucking gloomy at one point, and I don't know if I'll be able to like have the mental capacity to read that for like 3 days straight. So if we were to do Sunday and Monday night were to be Worm, and Tuesday night I were to find like something really really bad or like funny for us to read. Um, um, would you guys want to do that if like tomorrow night we were to find? I already have something planned. I've already found something for tomorrow night that we can do that'll make us laugh. Um, instead of making us cry. So would you guys want to see something like that? Absolutely. All right, cool. That's what we're doing. So yeah, Sunday Monday are Worm nights. Are you reading the book you sent earlier? You know what? I think that would get me in trouble with copyright. So no. Um yeah, that would probably get me in trouble with copyright. What I want to do is I wanted to read Ben Shapiro's book on live stream, but I would probably get copy striked, and that would not be good for me. But we can. There's plenty of resources online that we can abuse. And I already had something in mind, so yeah. All right. So good to know. Tuesday and the Monday, Sunday, Monday, Worm nights. Tuesday is shitty book night. Sounds good. Can we do private Shapiro reading? Read Mein Kampf? Absolutely not. Unless we read Mein Kampf in Ben Shapiro's voice, then we can do that. We can do that. A private Shapiro reading. I'm just like me in a dark room, surrounded by candles, like a portrait of Ben Shapiro on the wall, just going like chapter 1. Her breasts bobbled down the stairs as she opened up her breasts. She was a very attractive young woman. Really hot. My 17-year-old self stared at her. Evil cricket. Ben Shapiro Libtard. Only tritones. Oh no, we have to get back to work before I start thinking about getting copies tracked by Ben Shapiro. I promise you, at least one character in World will be Ben Shapiro. I promise. Agitation 3.4. I'll be right there. Yes, I saw a light in the living room window and put my hand over the lower half of my cell phone while I barely investigated. Damn, my dad was home. I put the phone to my ear. I'm sorry, I gotta go. I gotta run. No, look. As the front door opened, I snapped the phone shut and jammed it in my pocket. I'd apologize for hanging up later. I definitely didn't want my dad to see the phone. Airstrike that motherfucking copyright. Wait, where can I go? You can come to my stream when when the final Zook read stream is just me reading Ben Shapiro's book with him on it and getting copy strike by Ben Shapiro. That's when you can get the copy strike. I'd apologize for hanging up later. I definitely didn't want my dad to see the phone. I didn't think he would stop me from owning one, but ever since my mom's death, cell phones had carried some strong negative connotation. That, and I'd have to explain where I'd got it and how I'd paid for it. Brian had given me 3 identical cell phones, all disposables, the first thing that morning. I decided to go with him to the loft rather than head to school. The way I figured it, I didn't have much of a chance to focus on classes with Thursday's bank robbery occupying my attention on top of the stress of just being there and waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as my skipped classes. Besides, I rationalized it didn't make a lot of sense to go if I knew there would be skipping again to go rob banks. I'd promised myself I would go the day after tomorrow, face the music. I spent the day with the group. Rachel had been out of the apartment, and others weren't specific on why I wasn't interested enough to risk looking too curious by asking. So it had just been me, Brian, Alec, and Lisa. We'd hammered out the fine details of the robbery, and I decided what weapons I wanted Lisa to ask the boss for. I'd elected for both a combat knife and a telescoping police baton. The knife we would serve for basic emergencies and those people who were just too tough to hurt with the baton. The baton, 21 inches long when fully extended, that's another innuendo, was for my general use, offering more clout than I'd otherwise get with my fists. Lisa had promised I would have more tomorrow. Damn, player, your mom's death is really fucking up the whole villain thing. Yeah, you want to become a supervillain, but then your mom just ups and fucking dies. Damn. Sucks. After that, we had avoided the subject of robbery by some unspoken agreement. It wouldn't do to overthink or risk it by getting too nervous. Either way, I had felt a need to burn some nervous energy, so I helped clear out the storage closet around lunchtime with Lisa and Brian's help. We'd sorted out the stuff, found a place for it all, and set up the room with odds and ends they had lying around. The stuff included an extendable clothes rack, a dresser, an inflatable mattress, and a bedside table with a lamp attached. It was enough space for me to keep some toiletries, a spare change of clothes or two, and my costumes and my equipment. Lisa spent a whole lot of time talking about what I could do to make my space on my own, and what I could buy, how I could decorate, but I was happy enough with what we had here. I kind of think it was a bit Spartan because it sort of fit how I didn't plan to be around that long while still feeling weirdly appreciative at being accepted as a part of the group. Having tired ourselves out, we'd collapsed on the couches and watched some Alex movies from Earth Aleph, the alternate Earth that our Earth had been communicating with since Professor Haywire tore a hole between realities. Yeah, multiverses are just a thing. It's like established that there is in fact like multiverses. Just a little tidbit. Media was one of the few things that could be traded back and forth throughout the whole. Long story short, you could get books, DVDs, and movies of TV shows that from the other world if you were willing to accept the price tag. The benefit, I got to spend the afternoon seeing how the other world universe had handled episode 1 and 2 of the Star Wars films. In fact, they were still pretty disappointing. Oh my god. Imagine living in a world where episodes 1 and 2 are still the worst Star Wars movies. Imagine living in that world. Imagine living in a world before Disney decided to, like, beat Star Wars into submission. Can't if I've never watched Star Wars. Well, that's your fault, dude. That's your problem. Don't pin this on me. Yeah. Imagine living in a world where, like, alternate Last Jedi just still sucks. By the time my dad got in, I had pork chops defrosted, dusted with lemon and pepper, and sitting in a frying pan with vegetables in the microwave. Cooking was something you started doing when you only had one parent, unless they really like takeout. Hey, my dad greeted me. It smells good. I started dinner a bit early tonight because I have somewhere to be tonight. If that's cool. He tried to hide it, but I could see a bit disappointing. Of course, he said. Your new friends. I nodded. Let me get changed and I'll have to ask you about them. He promised as he headed upstairs. Great. I hadn't had to answer these questions last night because my dad had been working late. My mind started racing to anticipate questions and coming up with plausible details. Should I use their real names, or at least the names they'd given me? I wasn't sure if that would be a breach of trust. I decided to use their real names for much the same reason I decided to use my own with them. It just prevented disasters if my dad ever happened to meet them, which was a terrifying thought, or if they called for me. I didn't need to worry about my dad hearing about 4 kids being arrested, all of whom had the same name as my friends, since most or all of them were minors and their names would be kept from the media under law. I was also under the impression that the courts didn't always unmask capes when they arrested them. I wasn't entirely sure what was up with that. It seemed like something to ask Lisa about. By the time my dad had come back downstairs, I'd resolved to try and keep my lies as close to the truth as possible. It would be easier to keep everything straight that way. That, and I hated lying to my dad. My dad had changed out of his dress shirts and khakis into a t-shirt and jeans. He mussed up my hair and took out over the last bit of cooking. I sat at the table so I could talk to him. So, what's going on? He asked. Fuck Kathleen Kennedy, all me and my homie. Yeah, fact. And I know you don't. I know you don't watch Stairwares, but the Lucasfilm CEO loves to complain at the fact that they don't have any stories to tell. When their first act as a studio was to basically like get rid of all the expanded lore that had come out after the last Star Wars movie came out in 2005, Episode 3. And then they decided to complain that there was the stairwares. yeah. When they decanonized all of Stairwares as expanded lore. And they were like, we don't have any stories. Well, there was plenty of prime story material right then and there. But this night is not about Stairware. It's about Worm. Yeah, go ask Boy George. Give those movies back to Boy George. God. This could be like a rant stream about how much I hate the new Star Wars movies, but it's not going to be. That's for another time. If we encounter a writing error tomorrow night, that's like the new Stairwares movies, we'll discuss it. But right now, back to Worm. A well-written story. I shrugged. I hated feeling tense around my dad. He'd never bugged me about the bullying, so I'd always been able to come home and sort of let my guard drop. I couldn't do that now because I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as my skipped classes, and my friends brought a whole mess of secrets and lies into the mix as well. I felt like I was on the verge of a terminal breach of trust. One mistake or a single concerned phone call from my school, and my dad would probably flip, and that wouldn't be the same between us for a long time. Are you gonna tell me their names? He asked. He set the food on the table he set the food on plates and brought it to the table. Brian, Lisa, Alec, Rachel. I confessed. They're all right. Get along with most of them. Where'd you meet them? School? I shook my head. I wanted to get away from the school for a bit, so I caught a bus downtown to catch a bit of a break. I ran to them at the library. Partial truths. You couldn't really catch a bus downtown and back during lunch break. I tried when I was avoiding the trio, but I doubted my dad would research that. I did sort of cross paths with the undersiders of the library, though. They go to the library at lunch? What are they like? Brian's pretty cool. He's the one I talk to the most. A boy, huh? My dad's wiggled his eyebrows at me. That every dad ever. If it's a girl, it's like, got yourself a girlfriend. If it's a boy, it's like, whoa, woo. They the police. Dad, stop. It's not like that, I protested. I doubted Brian had the slightest interest in me, not least because I was 2 or 3 years younger than him. Besides, well, it was me. Not to mention the age difference to my dad. Changing the subject, I said, Lisa's alright too. Really smart. Though I haven't talked to her all that much. It's nice being able to hang out with another girl again, even if she's pretty different from me. If she's smart, she can't be much different than you. I could have kicked myself. I couldn't explain that she was a bad guy while I was an aspiring superhero, or exactly how she was smart. I tucked myself into a minor corner where I didn't have an answer ready, and I needed to avoid doing that. Fumbling for an answer, I said she's only a year older than me, and she's graduated high school already. That was the truth. She cheated, but she technically did graduate. My dad smiled. Impressive. They tell me they're all excellent students that can serve as good role models for you. I could have choked. Good role models? Them? I kept composure and limited myself to a smile and shake of the head. Sorry. Alas. What about the other ones? What about the others? just turns into fucking Shakespeare. Alas. Alex is the youngest one, I think. Kind of hard to connect with. He's an amazing artist from what I've seen, but I don't really see him draw. It seems kind of hard to get him interested and involved in anything. He always looks bored. As I said the words aloud, I realized they weren't exactly true. The 2 times I'd seen Alec react to anything that had been when he played his prank on Bitch, tripping him, and after Bitch and I had been fighting. A streak of Schadenfreude to his personality, maybe. What about the last one? Rita? Rachel? Yeah, Rachel. I don't get along with her. I don't like her. There we go. My dad nodded, but I didn't say anything. I was halfway expecting the typical parental line of maybe if you try showing interest in things she likes or some other inane advice. I never got that piece of advice. I never got that. Huh. My dad didn't pull that on me. He just took another bite of his pork chop. I elaborated a bit to fill the silence. She wants things her way, and when she doesn't get them, she gets mean. I don't know, I get enough of that at school. You know? I know, my dad said. It was a good lead-in for him to question me about what was going on at school, but he didn't take it. He stayed quiet. I felt immensely grateful right then. My dad was respecting the boundaries I'd set, not pushing, not digging for more. It made this conversation so much easier that it might have otherwise have been, and I knew it couldn't be that easy for him. I felt like I owed him something. Sighing, I admitted, like at school, the people who give me a hard time, they're sort of ganged up on me on Monday. Just, taking turns insulting me. And that's why I needed to get away and went downtown. I felt embarrassed saying it because it was humiliating enough to live through it without having to recap it, and because I felt so disconnected from the rest of the conversation. But I didn't say it right then. But if I didn't say it right then, I don't think I'd be able to. My dad sort of went still. I could see him compose himself and choose his words before he asked. Not to diminish how much it sucks to get put down like that, but he didn't do anything else? I raised my eyebrows in question and chewed. They had, kind of, but I couldn't really say they used Mom's death to fuck with my head, without having to explain the Emma thing. Anything that like what happened in January? He asked. I lowered my eyes to the plate, then shook my head. After a few moments I said, no, January was a one-time thing. They pulled smaller pranks since then, hassled me, but no repeat performances on that front. I made air quotes with my fingers as I said, pranks. Okay, my dad said quietly. That's a relief to know. I didn't feel like sharing anymore. You'd think I would feel better after opening up, but I didn't. I felt frustrated, angry, awkward. It was like a reminder that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have a real conversation with my dad like I used to be able to. More than anything, I felt guilty. Part of the guilt was because I had apparently left my dad think that every time I was bullied, it was like it had been that day nearly 4 months ago, when things had been at their worst. I stabbed a bit of fat with my fork. When were you going out? My dad asked. I glanced at a digital clock on the stove and noted the time. I was glad for the excuse to escape. Now. Is that okay? I won't be long. Meeting your friends? He asked. Just going to meet Lisa for coffee and conversation away from the rest of the group. I told him as I stood up and moved my plate to the sink. The lie was heavier on my conscience after the open disclosure I just told him. Here, wait, he said. He stood up and fished in his pocket for his wallet. He handed me a 10. For the coffee. Sorry I don't have more. Have fun? I hugged him, feeling painfully guilty, then headed back to the door and put my shoes on. I was just opening the door when I barely heard him say, thank you. Love you, Dad. I love you too. Be safe. I shut the door, grabbing the gym bag I'd stashed under the back steps, and headed around the house for a light jog. I held the gym bag low so my dad wouldn't see me carrying it. I took the same general route I took to my morning runs, heading east towards heading east towards the bay. This time, though, instead of turning up towards the boardwalk, I headed south. Back in its heyday, every inch of the city had been a bustling metropolis. Ships were coming and going at all hours, trains were coming through to deliver goods to be shipped overseas, and the city seemed to be teeming with people. The northern end of the bay, especially the area close to the water, was all about the industry. Ships and warehouses, factories and railroads, and homes for everyone who worked those jobs. You also had the ferry running across the bay itself. The ferry was my dad's pet project. Apparently, it was one of the first things to go when the import-export dried up. With the ferry gone, the docks had been sort of cut off from the rest of the city unless you were willing to drive for an extra half an hour to an hour. My dad held the opinion that the lack of transportation in the rest of the city was why the docks had become what they were today. He believed if the ferry were to start running again, my jobs were to be created. The people in the low-income neighborhoods would have more access to the rest of the city, and the low-class, high-class, no-middle-class dynamic of Brockton Bay would smooth out. So when I tried to think of a place that was fairly private but easy to find, I thought of the ferry. Probably thank my dad for the idea. I approached the station and found a disused restroom chart to change into my costume. The building and the ferry itself were well kept, at least outside, which is one of the reasons my dad felt it would take so little effort to get things going again. Still, that wasn't the city's issue. They didn't want to provide the addicts and the gangbangers easy access to the rest of the city, all while paying to provide the service, for mere hopes of maybe getting improvements in the future. So the city kept the station and the ferry looking pretty for any tourists that wandered far enough south from Brockton, from the boardwalk, and maintained eternal temporary out of service and coming soon signs up around the building in the brochures. Aside from regular replacements to keep them looking new, the signs hadn't been taken down in nearly a decade. I ignored the doors in the station's interior, instead headed up the stairs to the outdoors patio that overlooked the bay. There were some large panes of glass to break the wind, and some stones and tables and benches for those who wanted to sit to eat. It's one of the best vantage points for seeing the PHQ in all of its splendor. The headquarters was a series of arches and spires mounted on the refitted oil rig. Even the platform was built on the most beautiful. Zach can't speak English tonight, guys. Even the platform it was built on was beautiful, though, with hard edges and sweeping lines. The entire thing was lit up by tinted spotlights and set against a faint corona of shifting colors. This is what ruined the word corona forever. Like Aurora Borealis, trapped in the shape of a soap bubble. A force field forever on, shielding the people who watch over Brockton Bay. Wasn't sure if he'd show up. A male voice broke the silence. I turned... Oh, that's Arms Master. Oh, shit. Excuse me, just a moment. Forgot Arms Master was a thing. Wasn't sure if you'd show up. A male voice broke the silence. I turned to face Arms Master. I'm sorry, I had to hang up with you on your receptionist. Real life called. He looked somewhat different than the first time I met him. His lips were set in a hard line, his feet set farther apart. His arms were folded across his chest with his halberd on one hand, the pole resting against his shoulder. It conveyed such a different attitude that I wasn't momentarily wondered if he was the same person under his suit. I need to call in a favor. Aurora Borealis? At this time of day? Steamed hams. I think this chapter... Yes. I think this chapter is pretty short. No, I lied. It's average length. Is the next one's pretty short? No, it's also average length. I'm stupid. I thought that... No! No. There we go. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Arms Master is, is one of the heroes that is like in this fictional town of Massachusetts called Brockton Bay, which is where the story takes place. Um, he is who Taylor met the first time she went out in her costume to go do some crime fighting. Um, where she rescued the gang of people she's with now from being killed before she knew they were villains. He no, he does not have 8 arms. He's like Batman if Batman were an asshole. His whole thing is that he can create weapons and armor. He hasn't mastered any of that. Yeah. Yeah. Batman. Well, but like Batman if Batman were more selfish. Like if Batman were fighting crime, well, he is kind of fighting crime for his own agenda to like, I don't know, keep Gotham safe. I mean, he's a very selfish. Yeah, yeah. He's fighting crime for his own agenda, more or less. But like Batman, you'll see, you'll see Armsmaster do his thing throughout the story. You'll see. Which is why I give him the Christian Bale Batman voice. I might call it at the halfway mark, or I'm gonna call it. Maybe I'll call it at part 7, because then we're officially at the halfway point of the. Oh no, we're not. I lied. Yeah, you know what? I'll call it next chapter. Once we're done with that, because I don't want my throat to like kill me like yesterday, where I did this for 5 hours straight. So you can probably expect the streams to like average out at like 2.5 hours, most likely. Usually, it depends on the arc, really. This one's just a long one. A favor, he answered me, as if he needed to say it out loud to keep himself for himself to believe. Oh, I'm sorry. Agitation 3.5. A favor, he answered me, as if he needed to say it out loud for himself to believe it. The tone gave me pause. Had I misread him? And that first night where I'd given him credit for Lung and assumed he was grateful. Yeah, I tried to sound confident. But I should explain things. First off, the Undersiders offered me a spot on their team. I took it. His reaction was subtle. His chin rose a fraction, he shifted his weight fractionally, and the grip of his armored gauntlets tightened enough on his halberd to make a faint metal-on-metal screech. I think you better start making sense fast. He spoke in a calm voice. He's not very calm right now. He's itching for some crime fighting. Not the one wearing hockey pads. Even his body language was making me want to back away. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I've been thinking a fair bit about the conversation we had last Sunday. It seemed odd how you accepted that I was a good guy as fast as you did. Would I be right in guessing you had either had a lie detector built into your helmet or some powers that work more or less in the same way? He didn't hurry to give me back a reply, taking a moment before telling me, lie detectors can be fooled, even mine. Well, tell me if anything sets an alarm ringing, or if your instincts tell you I'm lying. I was a good guy then, I'm a good guy now. I joined the Undersiders because you said you were having trouble getting info on the guys. Now I know their faces, I know the names they're using, I have a pretty good idea of what their powers do, and I know where they're living. His posture relaxed. He slapped the pole of his halberd against his back and it snapped into place. If that's the case, then you've done us a great service. Would you be willing to come to the Protectorate headquarters and present the information to the team? My heart leapt, meaning the Protectorate, with Miss Militia, Triumph, Velocity, Dauntless, Battery, and Assault. I couldn't imagine seeing their reactions to everything I'd tell them, telling them about my fight with Bitch, maybe about my part in the fight with Lung, if Armsmaster was cool with that, hearing their stories in turn. I can't. Why not? His response was so quick it was very nearly an interruption. His tone and posture were both hostile in a flash. I was glad he still wasn't holding his halberd, because I think he might have pointed it at me. There's one more thing I need to find out for you, I said, raising my hands in sort of a surrender. I needed to find out who their boss was. I couldn't tell him that, though. The less he knew, the less likely Tattletale would know I told him anything. At least I was hoping that was the case.
So tell me what you know and then go back to find the last detail.
I can't, I answered for the second time in 10 seconds, hating myself for doing it.
You better have a good reason, or I'm dragging you to the PHQ, and we'll see how you tease when you find the entire team.
Which would be a disaster. I swallowed hard. What if I told you there was a spy in the PHQ?
You're setting off the lie detector. Try again.
I bit my lip. Confronting a man with this voice would be the most horrifying experience, truly. I bit my lip. I'd been hoping that phrasing it as a question would throw it off. There's something at play for all intents and purposes, a spy in your ranks.
Mostly true. What is it?
I can't be any clearer without figuring out what I told. Just being here is risky. If word got out how Lisa's power worked, I was almost positive she'd know. He stared at me for several moments.
The Tattletale girl.
Armsmaster had to come to the conclusion more or less on his own. I hope that was enough to keep Tattletale from drawing a connection to me. Still, fuck. He stared off at the PHQ for a few long moments. Without looking at me, he said,
So why are you not willing to provide any concrete information? Why did you call me?
They're planning something. They want me to help them. I do this maybe 1 or 2 other jobs, and I'm sure I can get the last essential detail, and you'll have what you need to capture these guys. He didn't reply. Why do you think Bill used it? You're right. You're totally right. I'd be scared shitless if I was being confronted with someone who sounded like that. Absolutely. So I asked my favor. I need to know if these things go sour. If I need to sabotage their plan, I'll just have you pull my ass out of the fire and keep me out of jail.
What are they planning?
I can't say, I admitted. If I told him, Lisa might know I'd ratted the team out when from any changes in response time, extra guards or whatever else. However justified my silence was, I couldn't see Armsmaster getting increasingly irritated.
Is it murder? Is someone gonna get hurt?
No, I said. I'm pretty sure no civilians are going to get hurt unless this thing goes really wrong, which is something I'm hoping to prevent. He frowned and stopped gazing out the window to look straight at me.
I'm not giving you any protection.
I clenched my fist at my sides. That's the only thing I need, and you've got them.
You're a stupid girl,
Armsmaster said. He gave me a moment to let the words sink in. He didn't give me a chance to speak. Oh, please don't monologue. Please. Oh my god. Oh my god. He bowled over me, his voice rising as he spoke.
You're asking for my permission to carry out a major crime. At least I assume it's a major crime, because you wouldn't be asking otherwise. You want me to stand by so you can play your little spy game with a team who has 2 murderers in it.
2? I couldn't believe Rachel had maybe killed someone at some point, manslaughter if nothing else, but who else would? Eyes wide, I asked him, who? I didn't get to finish my question. Armsmaster talked over me until I shut my mouth and listened.
Do you think you're clever? In the real world, undercover cops are handlers. They have someone to report to, someone you can call for backup at any time. You're a middle schooler with delusions of grandeur.
I'm not in middle school.
Oh, well.
He crossed his arms.
I stand corrected on all counts.
The sarcasm in his voice was palpable. I protested. And if I did have backup or a handle or anything like that, they'd know. The way I'm doing this is only way this could work. Use your lie detector, you'll know I'm telling the truth about this.
I know you believe you're right. That doesn't make it God's honest truth.
There was something about hearing that from Armsmaster that made it twice as hard to take. I opened my mouth, my brain just couldn't piece together a coherent response. I shut my mouth again.
Abandon the charade, little bug girl, before you bite off more than you can chew. Tell me what you know, right here, then go home. I don't care if you put the costume away for good or if you sign up for the wards, but don't go out with a solo act. That's my recommendation.
That stung. I tried again. I gave you Lung. Full credit. You can't give me the benefit of the doubt?
You gave me a dying man,
Armsmaster bellowed, staring at me.
That was on my shoulders. I had to put with 2 days of losing command of my team, 2 days where they confiscated my halberd and my power armor. I was interrogated, all my equipment taken apart and checked. All because you couldn't resist using your bugs to give that man a fucking near-lethal dose of poisons.
His attitude from the beginning of this meeting had been hostile. Now I understood why. I held my ground. That's not my fault, I told Armsmaster, my voice strained with anger. I gave the voice to a suspicion that had been nagging at the edge of my consciousness since I'd heard Logue me about being hospitalized. I didn't dose him with enough venom to kill him. What I think is that the tranquilizers you pumped into his system knocked down his ability to heal, which is what led him the poisons to do as much damage as they did. We glared at each other. As much people didn't exchange glares when they can't see each other's eyes. Still, it was hard to imagine the expression on his face.
If you contact me again, you better be prepared to answer every question I have. Beyond that, I'm not conditioning anything while you're trying. I'm not condoning anything about what you're trying to pull. You're on your own.
I would have been happy to storm off or offer my own angry parting words, except there was something else I needed from him. On the assumption that he'd take me up on my offer, I thought I'd ask a last minor favor. Now I was put in a situation where I might have to beg a man I really wanted to punch in the face. I paused, trying to find the words. I'm asking you to please do not tell anyone we met tonight. No records on paper or computer. Don't do anything different because of what you learned tonight. I know I can't make you. I know I don't have anything to offer you besides the information I'm going to get. But if these guys get wind I met you, it's going to go really badly for me.
You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it.
No, I shook my head, furious that he was being so mule-headed. My fist clenched. Don't toy with me here. Maybe you don't agree with what I'm doing, but I started this because I wanted to do you a favor. The least you could do is not screw me with me on this. Get me hurt or killed because your fucking rep gets a smudge on it. I got in my last words as I left my mouth, but I couldn't hardly take them back.
Fine,
he decided, then dismissed me.
You can go now.
It was a dick move, that last bit, because I had following his order if I listened, and it made me look bad if I didn't. Still, if there was any upside to the bullying I'd endured out of costume, it was I could handle the maneuvers of bullies and assholes when I was in costume, too. I left and didn't think twice about it. I was pissed, and it was a lot easier to be pissed at Armsmaster than it was to be angry with myself. This hadn't gone the way I'd planned. I didn't even know if the fine of his agreement the fine of his agreement was as I'd asked, or if I was royally screwed the next time I would meet with the Undersiders. There were two ways I could respond to this. I could either drop the plan and put away the costume like Armsmaster wanted, or I could pull the undercover gig and prove him wrong. Fuck it. I was going to rob the hell out of that bank. I'd win the trust of the Undersiders. I was going to figure out who was running the show, and then I would go to hand over all the info to Miss Militia. I was thinking, not Armsmaster.
You hand over the info. Ugh. Hockey pants.
All right, last chapter for the night because we are officially halfway through this part. I think this is shorter than. Yeah, this looks shorter than usual. This is should be a good. I think this is like right before. Is this right before the heist? Or should we just call it here, and then do the heist next Sunday? What do you guys think? One more chapter? Call it here? One more chapter, or we call it we call it here. Heist, robbery, same thing. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we'll call it here. We'll save the robbery arc for next time. We just finish up that little plot point. All right. So that was about 2 hours. As long as Armsmaster is not included in these chapters, I don't think he is. I should be able to read. Yeah, I'll save my sweet voice for our silly reading tomorrow. To
to contrast from all the seriousness of Worm. Yeah, we'll call it here. So thanks guys for listening. I will see you back here tomorrow for something real silly. If you don't want to listen to me read stupid shit tomorrow, you are more than welcome to just wait till next Sunday for the next Worm stream. But it's gonna be silly tomorrow. There's gonna be there's gonna be a lot more meme voices. I'll tell you that much than Worm. But yeah, thank you all for joining me tonight, and have a great night, everyone. Bye bye. See you tomorrow.